Thanks for joining us on the second half, Kathleen.
Nice to be here, Ann. Thank you.
Before we get to our next agenda, could we clarify on who qualifies for what mortgage when?
Sure. What I was referring to before, I was saying that it was difficult to potentially qualify for a non-conforming mortgage depending on your situation. That's what I meant to say. If I had a client, actually, he was applying for $1 million mortgage with $1 million to $2 million of annual income, no debt, a net worth of $50 million. This client owns 5 different properties.
Where is this guy? No. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Sorry, he's not single.
Oh, well. Okay.
When he becomes single, I'll have him call you. Okay? So anyway, this client, $50 million net worth, 5 properties, one of them in Connecticut, in Fairfield County, primary residence. We applied for a loan for $1 million. We were willing to go with an adjustable rate mortgage, and the client had all kinds of difficulties. We supplied so much financial information to this lender.
He was putting how much down?
It's actually, I should clarify, actually, the client owns the property. The property appraised at $3 million, and they still were giving him a hard time to give him a $1 million loan on the property. He has no debt, no mortgages, nothing. And he has income of $2 million a year.
What do you think about that, Kathleen?
Through my years, there's a couple of red flags that
here we go, guys.
And it's not going to be controversial in any way, shape, or form. If I'm hearing this correctly, the gentleman was looking to get $1 million cash out.
That's right.
Okay. I think in this environment, that is a lot of money for a lender to consider lending. On a side note, we did have a conversation that some of his profile had changed a little bit over the course of the last 2-year history of income. From my perspective,
could you have done that loan?
In all honesty, probably not, because of the things that I did here that were trigger points for me. I'm owning 5 properties and not having any of them rented. They're raising, although we see it as something really positive, it would lend concern to a very conservative underwriter. Why does he have all these properties and yet none of them are rented? How could he live in 5 properties at one time? Even though he does obviously have the means to afford these 5 properties and run these households. Secondarily, the contradiction in what Brad was saying versus what I was saying, I am saying that yes, there is jumbo money out there, but speak to somebody as early as possible in the process. This gentleman was a refinance cash out candidate, which is a little bit different than the people that we're speaking to directly about the purchase market. So that's.
Are you saying the refi market is more difficult than the purchase market right now?
I'm saying that every single solitary loan profile, regardless if the 3 of us all think that we're applying for the exact same loan, we don't, and we all basically have the same. We all have our own little glitches possibly that are going to raise additional question marks in a very conservative underwriter's mind, and that's where the problems may come up. Even though we all on paper or conversationally we all sound like we're the same person, we aren't necessarily. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Well, you're saying that each person is an individual with an individual history that has to be considered in the mortgage.
Absolutely.
I think what you're trying to say also, Kathleen, is that lenders are probably more comfortable lending to someone who owns one house, doesn't have multiple obligations, multiple house obligations.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
So we're all together on
Yes.
what we're saying here?
We are.
She's the expert on mortgages, so I have to defer to her.
Well, thank you.
Well, now I'll throw you both the curveball. Let's talk about what's going on now. Where were we? Where are we going? Are we at the bottom, Brad?
I think
The question everybody's asking.
Well, I think it's very difficult to tell whether we are. My gut feeling tells me we have to work off the tremendous amount of inventory that we have currently in the area, Fairfield County, for instance, before we really start to see some kind of a potential increase in pricing. But I do think from what I'm seeing is people are out there buying, and I think that people find pricing very attractive at this time. But one of the detriments recently that we've seen is the quick rise in interest rates. interest
That's
rates.
Kathleen's fault, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, no, it's not her fault, but I think it's the government's fault for overspending.
Not political on this station.
No.
Kathleen, what do you think about this?
I agree with Brad. I believe that we probably are nearing the bottom, if we're not at the bottom. People are re-entering the market, and I think what we really need to encourage people, although interest rates are rising, there are multiple factors that affect interest rates. They're still affordable. Housing is still affordable, and instead of putting it off and sitting on the sideline, take advantage of where we are in the market and buy the house that you've been looking for. Get off the sidelines.
Well, the thing that always confuses me is, I've refinanced. I'm the queen of refinance. I probably
I've
financed.
done your loan a few times, Ann.
Rates tick. Churn me again. Nothing is in blood that it's forever.
No.
People can refi down the road so why is everybody concerned about such a small tick up in the mortgage rates?
Well, it's first of all, I wouldn't consider it a small tick. I think a 1% increase in a month's period, and it wasn't even a month's period. We had a 0.5% jump in literally a couple of days. This recent increase pretty much took everybody by surprise. There weren't, the leading indicators weren't saying, "Oh, get ready, it's about to become a bumpy ride." Anybody that was involved in the market was hedging that rates were going to stay the same. We were going to hold off inflation. Prices of houses were going to stabilize, at a comfort level for everybody, and we were going to have a big resurgence in the housing market, and people were going to be comfortable. We were going to have the consumer confidence to make that leap. And we kind of missed that. We had good rates, and we had good housing prices, but people were waiting for better.
You think they missed the bottom?
I don't think we know that. I don't really think anybody can speak to that. Do you?
I think so. I think we have. I think the only way we're going to see rates as low as they were is if we fall back and have another big drop in the economy, which I'm really hoping that we don't. The Federal Reserve, Fed governors, what they're saying now is they think that the worst is behind us. I hope they're right. As long as we don't have any big economic jolts of any kind, or God forbid a terrorist act or something, I think that the worst is probably behind us. But it doesn't mean that we're going to jump up really quickly and have rapid growth and everything's going to be what it was back a few years ago.
Well, it was kind of insane for a while. People would buy houses, repaint them, change the floor and flip them and make $80,000.
That's right. You had that.
You didn't do that, did you, Brad?
No, I never had that good fortune. I wish I had. Had a few clients who actually were in that kind of business where they'd buy a house, live in it for 2 years, take advantage of the rules where you'd have the $500,000 exemption for a couple, as long as you occupy the house as your primary residence for 2 out of the last 5 years. They'd flip the house in 2 years and move on to another house and do the same thing. But I think, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who may have done one flip too many, and now they may have traded up to something and they're stuck with that current house.
Well, I will go back to my old adage that, and I'm sure you all agree, you have a home, you have a home, I have a home. Real estate is more than just an investment. It is an investment, but it's also a lifestyle and very, very important. And it's not like buying a stock.
No.
And nothing can sustain a 10% annual increase. We were raised in an environment where housing appreciated 2-3% as a norm. And those couple of years that we had prices increasing 10%, it's just unsustainable.
But we're all going to agree it's still a good time to be buying a house.
The best time probably in years.
That's right.
In
Probably
years.
in years. Oh, well, great. Thanks for joining us, guys. It was a good, upbeat session, and I appreciate it. And it was good information you shared with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen.
And thank you for making me a part of your show. Thank you, Ann.
Well, great. All right. Good night. I think we did a good
Great.
job. Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank
Ann.
you. Good to see you.
Thank you, Brad Aron. Thank you, Kathleen. And thank you, Ann Morrison. It was really a very interesting show.